I, like many, are fascinated by Simone Weil, spelled W-E-I-L, born in Paris in February 3rd, 1909. She is an Aquarius. There's a photo of her when she was about 12. She graduated tops in her class in philosophy. One below her was Simone de Beauvoir, who also became quite a philosopher and a feminist. I find this woman very interesting. She was from a well-to-do Jewish family, but she was, and they were non-practicing Jews. Here is her chart. Here's her Aquarius sun. Mercury right on the edge here of Pisces, 28 degrees Aquarius. Venus in Capricorn. Here's a rising, 13 degrees of, 28 degrees of Sagittarius. Mars here, stuck in the 12th house, which hurt her later in life, I believe. Jupiter, definitely a planet of philosophy, up here in Virgo, sign of learning, and that's up here in the 8th house, actually. So 8th house is a difficult place for Jupiter, as Mars is in the 12th. This will have ramifications later on in her life. Pluto, in conjunction with the North Node, very interesting that she had this timely, i.e. North Node, compulsive desire to do 6th house things, which to be of work and service. She lasted as a high school teacher for a year or two, and then she decided she wanted to see how the workers were faring, so she joined an auto plant. She worked in an auto plant off and on for about a year, which was not good for her health. She always had very delicate health. She was a radical since probably high school and college, and a reformer, always had petitions to be signed and things like that. Became a communist, as were so many intellectuals in the 30s in Europe. Then in about 1937, she wanted to take a step further, and she joined in the Spanish Civil War, and there she became injured. You can see that war does not work for her very well. Mars, the planet of war, is stuck in the 12th house, which is not a particularly good place for it. It also squares Jupiter down here. It's in, well, it's just not a very good thing. It's opposite Pluto, actually, although it's a wide opposition. So Pluto, her need to work and everything, was overcome by this subconscious desire to do battle and to, test her strength and her abilities. She was injured in the Spanish Civil War, and she recovered in Assisi, the town of St. Francis, and she met a priest, and they did a lot of talking, conversation, everything. She almost got herself baptized as a Catholic, but she couldn't quite bring herself to do it because she preferred a more wide-ranging view of religion. She liked things like the Upanishads and Buddhism and other faiths. So she didn't want to limit herself just to one faith. Well, when the war began, she fled to England, and there she got tuberculosis, and the tuberculosis was, of course, very serious, killed a lot of people, and her doctor told her that she should eat hearty as one way to get over it, and she did the opposite. She was consumed with the idea of the suffering that people were having on the continent that were stuck in the Second World War. She didn't want to eat more than perhaps the people back home were eating, the people in Paris, or maybe the soldiers fighting the war. So she ate even less. And we would call it anorexia today, but it was anorexia that came from this stubborn, perverse, empathic need that she had to be in the footsteps of those people who were suffering. But by doing this, she made herself suffer, and she died in 1943. So she died at the age of 34. And the eighth house, as I say, it has to do with things including sex and death and regeneration. And Jupiter there was afflicted by Mars, and there was a very good aspect here from Neptune. Now, Neptune has a lot to do with the mystic impulse. It has a lot to do with the creative artist and the ideals. She had extremely high ideals, didn't she? That's because she was born with the moon in conjunction with Neptune. Very, very high ideals. But it always comes with a kind of otherworldliness that is has a hard time finding its place in this world. And also, the moon, when at her birth, was opposite Uranus, the planet of the anarchistic, of the unusual, of the eccentric, you know. So there's this eccentric energy running at the same time as this tremendous creative, but also what's the word I'm thinking of? This impulse that makes her need to give of herself and to be so idealistic that she's above the world. So she is thought of now as a saint. People look on her with much interest. Hundreds of articles are written about her every year, and although her fame has not penetrated that much to the United States, it certainly has to Europe. And I think that's all that I can say right now about this amazing woman. Was she an intellectual? Was she a philosopher? Was she a religious mystic? Or did she go astray and